Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Crime Whisper. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep. So before you drift off, let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and if you enjoy these cases, don't forget to like and subscribe now. Let's get comfortable, relax, and begin tonight's story case. One takes us to Stanley, Hong Kong. In the summer of 2007, it was around 7 p.m. on June 25th, when a woman was out walking her dog near Wong Ma Kok Road. Suddenly, the dog stopped, refusing to move forward instead. It bolted toward a nearby sewer, barking furiously as if sensing something was wrong. When the woman peered inside, she froze at the bottom of the sewer, sat a suitcase surrounded by flies, with maggots crawling from its zipper. The stench was overwhelming. Horrified, she quickly called the police. When officers arrived, they pulled the suitcase out. Inside was a decomposed female body, curled up, fully clothed, with short, blonde hair. A green electrical cord was wrapped around her neck, and a bag covered her head. Because of the advanced decomposition, identification was nearly impossible. Police had to rely on DNA and dental records soon. The victim was confirmed as 56-year-old Yuan, a beauty expert who owned a salon at the Yufei shopping center 5 days earlier. Her ex-husband Xu Ruxing, a bus driver, had reported her missing, although divorced. He revealed they had rekindled their relationship and were even planning to remarry. He explained that on June 20th, Yuan was supposed to meet him to help sell bus tickets, but she never showed up. Her phone was off. Her salon staff hadn't seen her, and fearing the worst, he filed a missing persons report. Police investigating the salon soon discovered bloodstains on the carpet and a pair of sneakers. DNA confirmed the blood belonged to Yuan. Surveillance footage revealed what had really happened. On June 19th, Yuan entered the shopping center and was never seen leaving around 2 p.m. A suspicious woman entered her salon, followed shortly by two men dragging a suitcase. 30 minutes later, all three left together, carrying that same suitcase. The woman hailed a taxi, and the men loaded it into the trunk. The driver later confirmed he had taken them to Wong Ma Kok Road, the very place where Yuan's body was discovered. Police quickly identified and arrested two suspects: a man named Heng Shangrong, a 32-year mobile phone dealer, and Yuan's close friend, 52-year-old Yuan Meiyun, who worked at a traditional Chinese medicine clinic. Both confessed, revealing the mastermind, 60-year-old Ba Jiangcheng, still on the run. At the time, Ba Jiang's story was tangled in betrayal and jealousy. He had moved from mainland China in the 1970s, married a local woman, and together they ran a tutoring school in a medicine clinic, but their marriage crumbled when another woman entered the picture. Yuan, the victim. What began as an affair of passion ended in obsession, revenge, and ultimately murder. Yuan's early life had been difficult. Unsatisfied with simply surviving, she pushed herself to learn beauty skills. She took courses, worked as a makeup artist, and even sold insurance on the side, winning awards for her sales. Over time, her beauty talents grew, and so did her reputation with loyal clients by her side. She finally opened her own beauty spa in the Yufei shopping center. It was there that her path crossed with bus driver Xu Ruxing. They fell in love, married, and had a son for a time. Life was good. Yuan devoted herself to her child's education, even enrolling him in a cognitive development class. That class happened to be run by the wife of a man named Ba Jiangcheng, a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. Fate brought Yuan and Ba Jiang together, and soon their professional conversations turned personal. They discovered common ambitions, dreams, and eventually an affair. Both left their marriages to be together, but while Yuan found new love, Xu Ruxing was left devastated, and Ba Jiang's wife reluctantly let go after he demanded a divorce. At first, Yuan and Ba Jiang's new life together flourished. Ba Jiang gained property, cars, and money after his divorce, but soon squandered most of it, leaving only his clinic afloat. Yuan stepped in to help, bringing her salon clients to the clinic and reviving his business together. They expanded into tutoring, a fashion store, even a weight loss center on the surface. They looked unstoppable. In 2001, Yuan decided to help her close friend Yuan Mei-yoon, who was struggling financially. She introduced her to Ba Zheng's clinic as an assistant. The two women had been as close as sisters, and Yuan thought this gesture would solve her friend's problems while easing her husband's workload, but she never imagined this act of kindness would plant the seeds of her own destruction day after day. Ba Zheng and Yuan Mei-yoon worked side by side. Their relationship slowly deepened. Yuan's instincts began to whisper that something wasn't right. Her husband grew distant, colder when she questioned him. He denied everything, insisting his relationship with Yuan was purely professional in truth. Ba Zheng no longer loved Yuan, but he wasn't ready to let her go either. She brought him customers and credibility, and he wasn't willing to lose such a valuable partner. Then came the breaking point one day in 2003. Yuan walked into the clinic unexpectedly and caught her husband in the act with her best friend. The betrayal shattered her. Furious, she demanded he end the affair, but instead of repenting, Ba Zheng coldly refused, demanded a divorce, and moved out soon after. He and Yuan Mei-yoon became an official couple. Yuan's life had come full circle just as she once stole a man from his wife. Now her own best friend had stolen hers. Heartbroken and alone, Yuan turned back to Ku Xing, the man she had once abandoned out of regret and loneliness. She reconnected with him. Their old bond slowly rekindled, and Yuan began helping him again, selling bus tickets during her spare time. Though divorced from Ba Zheng, she was still tied to him through their shared businesses. But after the betrayal, she withdrew her support, refusing to promote his clinic, refusing to manage his stores without her influence. One by one, Ba Zheng's businesses collapsed. By 2007, only the clinic remained. Meanwhile, Yuan's beauty salon continued to thrive. Ba Zheng could not stand it. Watching Yuan succeed while his empire crumbled filled him with resentment in his mind. She was the reason for his downfall. Hatred took root, and the thought of revenge began to consume him. On June 17, 2007, Ba Zheng set his plan into motion. He instructed Yuan Mei-yoon to travel to Shenzhen to recruit accomplices there. She found Hang Shengrong and Yuan. Hang Shengrong was 32, once a psychology graduate who had worked in a hospital. Later, he became a real estate broker, then a trader in electronics. But after a string of failures, he was left unemployed, making ends meet by selling mobile phones online. Broken and desperate, he was the perfect pawn. Together with Yuan Ji, he would soon help carry out a crime so cold and calculating it would shock all of Hong Kong. Ba Zheng's plan relied on loyalty and debt to men. Hang Shengrong and Yuan Ji were indebted to him after failed businesses. He had once lent them 10,000 Hong Kong dollars, and they still hadn't repaid him. Out of obligation and desperation, both agreed to do whatever he asked through Yuan Mei-yoon. Ba Zheng explained the task. Yuan, his ex-wife, was supposedly having an affair and owed him money. He wanted them to teach her a lesson. If they succeeded, their debts would be erased, and they'd even receive a reward. Yuan Mei-yoon handed them a suitcase containing a letter and a small packet of white powder. The letter was chilling. It instructed them to kill Yuan. On June 18, 2007, Hang Shengrong and Yuan Ji arrived in Hong Kong. They stayed at a Tong Luo hotel, where they met with Yuan Mei-yoon to finalize the plan. The target: Yuan's beauty salon at the UFI shopping center. The following day, June 19th, was the Dragon Boat Festival. Yuan's salon was closed, but Yuan Mei-yoon lured her there under the pretense of discussing business. During their meeting, she slipped the white powder into Yuan's drink. Soon, Yuan began to feel weak. She drifted into unconsciousness in her chair with Yuan incapacitated. Yuan Mei-yoon stole her jewelry and cash, then summoned the two men waiting nearby. CCTV cameras later captured their movements. Hang Shengrong, disguised with a baseball cap, and Yuan Ji, wearing a mask, entered the salon with a suitcase inside. They pulled out a cord and strangled Yuan until she stopped breathing. Blood dripped from her mouth. So they covered her head with a plastic bag to contain the evidence then. They stuffed her body into the suitcase. The three left together. Yuan hailed a taxi, while the men lifted the heavy suitcase into the trunk. The cab drove them to Wang Ma Kok Road in Stanley where they dumped the suitcase into a They calmly changed into new clothes, discarded the old ones, exchanged currency for the men, and returned to their hotel that night, after dinner. Hang Shengrong and Yuan Ji boarded a train back to Shenzhen. They believed the job was flawless. Their debts were cleared, their tracks erased her, so they thought. But just one day later, Yuan's ex-husband Chu Xing realized she was missing. She had told him she was meeting Yuan Mei Yun at the salon on June 19th when he asked Yuan about it. She denied everything, panicked. She fled Hong Kong for Guangzhou on June 21 st. 6 days after the crime. The suitcase was discovered. Inside was Yuan's decomposed body. The investigation quickly unraveled the truth. 2 months later, police arrested Yuan Mei Yun and Heng Shengrong at Luohu Port. Yuan Ji, however, disappeared without a trace. In September 2008, the trial began at Hong Kong High Court. The charges: conspiracy to murder and preventing the lawful burial of a body. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence, including the very suitcase that carried Yuan's remains. But when faced with trial, both defendants changed their stories. Yuan Mei Yun claimed she was merely present, that she didn't know Yuan was being murdered, that she was tricked by Ba Jiang and only fled because she feared implication. Hang Shengrong claimed that when he and Yuan Ji entered the salon, Ba Jiang himself was strangling Yuan, and that they had only helped dispose of the body under duress. Both insisted their original confessions had been coerced by police threats. Yuan Mei Yun even accused investigators of violence. The courtroom turned into a battlefield of shifting blame. Ba Jiang, the man who set the plan in motion, remained a fugitive, and in the end, those once closest to Yu and her husband, her best friend, her business partners, were revealed as the architects of her brutal, enduring interrogation. I was pressed so hard on the chest that it became difficult to breathe when I was forcibly taken to the police station. An officer struck me on the head and chest. I only confessed out of fear of further torture later. The statements of the two defendants changed. Meanwhile, surveillance footage from the UF shopping center, where Yin's beauty salon was located, showed no evidence of Bo Junning entering or leaving. In fact, since January 2007, Bo Junning had never returned to Hong Kong after leaving Luohu Port. The judge therefore accepted his alibi and deemed the shifting testimonies of the two defendants, Yuan Mei and Heng Shengrong, unreliable. A month later, after 6 hours of deliberation, the jury reached a unanimous verdict. Both Yuan Mei and Heng Shengrong were found guilty of conspiracy to murder and preventing the lawful burial of a body. The court sentenced them to life imprisonment. The victim, Yun's son and younger sister, were present for the trial. Her sister expressed gratitude. The law is very fair. I sincerely thank the dedicated police for bringing the perpetrators to justice. Justice will never be absent, Yun's son added. Although my mother wronged my father and me before, I never blamed her. I don't know if Bo Junning was the mastermind, but I hope the police will catch the remaining suspects soon. In January 2010, Heng Shengrong's appeal was rejected. However, the court accepted Yuan Mei's appeal, ruling that the trial judge had misled the jury. On July 29, 2010, after 7 hours of deliberation, the High Court jury upheld Yuan Mei's life sentence. She refused to accept the outcome, but finally, on July 10, 2013, the Hong Kong High Court rejected her final appeal and confirmed the original sentence. Search for the two remaining suspects, Bao Junqing and Yuana, continues in August 2010. The Hong Kong Chinese Medicine Council reported that among newly registered practitioners was someone named Bo Junqing, but further checks confirmed he was not the suspect to this day. The pair remain missing. Some believe they are still alive and hiding. Others suspect they may have taken drastic measures to escape justice. This case is not only about murder, but also a painful lesson in betrayal, greed, and the devastating consequences of selfishness. It shows us that while justice may be delayed, it will eventually arrive. Story 2 takes us to Guangdong Province in 2013, where another shocking case unfolded at around 5 a.m. on June 30th. Two island workers were cleaning on Liu Island when they noticed something lodged near a rocky outcrop. It was a suitcase strangely encased in an iron cage welded from metal pipes. Wrapped in chains and secured with a lock, the suitcase appeared fairly new. Not something discarded out of wear, but it emitted a foul stench. Alarmed, the workers called the police. When officers arrived, they cut through the cage, unlocked the suitcase, and opened it. Inside was a horrifying sight: a headless corpse. Already in an advanced stage of decomposition, forensic examination revealed the victim was a woman, about 20 years old, 5'3" in height, who had died roughly a month earlier. Aside from this, there were no immediate clues to her identity. One detail, however, stood out: a tattoo on the front of her thigh, near the knee. The design resembled a cat, though it also looked somewhat like a seahorse. Liu Island had no permanent residence, and there were no drag marks outside the suitcase, suggesting the body hadn't been disposed of locally. Investigators speculated it had drifted by water from Shawan City, a few miles away, and began reviewing missing person cases. Their one case quickly drew attention: that of Shang, a factory worker who had disappeared on April 8, 2013. She had gone to work one morning and never returned. Her husband had searched across multiple provinces for months. With no success could the body be hers. After checking records, investigators learned Shang had no tattoos and was the mother of 3 children. By contrast, forensic analysis showed the victim had never given birth. This eliminated Shang as the victim. Police continued combing through missing persons in Shawan, but found no matches. Instead of narrowing, the case widened. If the victim wasn't from Shawan, she could have come from anywhere upstream. Shawan Port connected 3 rivers that ran through urban centers and neighboring cities, with millions of residents. Police broadened their search and reached out to other cities, but feedback revealed no missing persons matching the body in the suitcase. Investigators grew anxious. How could they trace one woman in a sea of millions? In dismemberment cases, motives usually point to affairs or grudges. The act itself often meant the killer wanted to hide the victim's identity, but the forensic team uncovered a breakthrough from the victim's chest. They removed two golden, translucent objects, silicone breast implants. Records from a cosmetic hospital confirmed they were part of a British brand, sold only through a distributor in Wuhan. That distributor had detailed sales logs. Just 29 pairs had ever been sold in China. Tracing them, investigators reached out to all recipients except one woman, who could not be contacted. Her name, Jin Chmiku, a 22-year-old from Ulan, Guangxi. She had undergone multiple surgeries, her last on April 23, 2013. The implants' serial number matched perfectly with those recovered from the body. Jean had missed a mandatory follow-up checkup in June. Her phone had been dead since June 8th. Family described her as cheerful and ambitious. She'd once run her own clothing store, but recently closed it due to losses when her family couldn't reach her. Her father filed a missing persons report. Her sister added another detail: Jean had a distinctive tattoo of a cat. DNA confirmed the truth. The headless body found on Liu Island was Jean Chinkabut. The mystery deepened. Jean lived in Jui, over 250 miles away. Why was she found in Jui? Tracing her last movements, police learned she had traveled to Shenzhen with her boyfriend on June 6th, after he flew abroad. Jean stayed at a friend's house on June 8th. She told her friend she was heading to a photo shoot but never returned phone. Records revealed her last calls that day: one at 12:40 p.m., another at 2:42 p.m. Both linked to a photographer. Neighbors confirmed seeing her leave around 3 p.m. and never come back. At first, suspicion fell on the photographer, but he claimed Jean never showed up for the shoot. Two colleagues backed his story. Investigators cleared them. This placed Jean's time of death shortly after 3 p.m. on June 8, though attention now shifted to her personal life. Though she had a wealthy Hong Kong boyfriend who provided for her generously, Evidence soon revealed Jean had been living a dangerous double life about half a month before the incident. Zhang Qingku had met an online friend from Fuzhou. She even traveled with him and was considering breaking up with her current boyfriend for the boyfriend. Such betrayal would have been unbearable. Could he have killed Jean? But investigation showed otherwise at the time of the crime. He wasn't even in China. He only rushed back after learning his girlfriend was missing. He had neither the motive nor the chance. So suspicion shifted away from him. Zhang's friend then revealed another truth. This trip to Shenzhen wasn't really to see her boyfriend off. Instead, it was to meet that same online friend, but records proved he never arrived in Shenzhen. Until 3 days after her disappearance, he too was cleared. The police suspected robbery, since her phones, bank cards, and other belongings were missing soon. One of her bank cards was used $9,200 withdrawn in 3 transactions. Surveillance revealed a man who disguised himself with odd gestures and a band-aid on his nose. He clearly knew her PNS. Then came another twist. Jean's boyfriend was secretly married with 2 children in Hong Kong, but his wife, busy raising the kids, had never contacted Jean and knew nothing of the affair. She too was ruled out. The case stalled until police tracked Jean's missing phones to an electronics shop in Shenzhen. The seller was a man named Hang Zuxin, but when officers went to question him, they learned he had just returned to his hometown Shanxi, the very place where Jean's body had been found. Suspicion grew when confronted. Hang insisted he was innocent, claiming the phones came from his cousin. Hang Fan, this cousin, a 29-year-old gambling addict, had sold them after asking how to disable their tracking. Digging deeper, police discovered on June 8 the day Jean vanished, Hang Fan's car drove into the very neighborhood she was staying later. At 4:18 p.m., his vehicle entered a surveillance-free alley and remained there for 7 hours. Only leaving close to midnight. Hang claimed he was gambling in a room he had rented there, but when questioned, he couldn't name who he was gambling with. The construction workers he mentioned denied knowing him piece by piece. Suspicion closed in. Was this alley the place where Jean Qingku had met her tragic end? On June 9th, just 2 days after Zhang Qingku went missing, a key suspect emerged. Hang Fezhen. His movements matched the victim's timeline. He was seen near the scene where the body was discovered, and most damning of all, he had possession of Jean's 2 mobile phones. Everything pointed to him, yet Hang flatly denied involvement. He insisted he had never driven Jean to the rented apartment and claimed he had simply bought the phones cheaply from an electronics store. Investigators knew he was lying, but without solid proof. Their hands were tied. That's when they searched his apartment. At first glance, the room looked spotless, but hidden in the cracks of the walls, doors, and floor, they uncovered tiny blood stains. Forensic tests confirmed the worst. They all belonged to Zhang Qingku. Confronted with undeniable evidence, Hang finally confessed his motive: a crushing gambling debt and overwhelming financial pressure after the birth of his child. Driven by desperation, he plotted a horrific crime. On June 8th, around 2 p.m., he picked up Jean, who was heading to a photo shoot. The ride quickly turned hostile when Jean mocked his broken-down car and complained about the fare. Enraged, Hang snapped hand decided to execute his plan. He pulled into a deserted spot, threatened Jean with a knife, and bound her with rope. He then drove her to the rented apartment, where he sexually assaulted her, stole her belongings, including 2 phones, 6 bank cards, and her watch, and forced her to reveal her PIN. Hang begged for mercy, but instead of sparing her life, Hang brutally murdered and dismembered her. He stuffed her headless body into a suitcase, welded it inside an iron cage, and chained it shut. Her severed head was sealed in a concrete block, intended to be thrown into the sea the following day. He transported the suitcase and block to his hometown, but when he tried to sink the suitcase, it unexpectedly drifted away. Panicked, he abandoned the head and fled back to Shenzhen, where the concrete block remained in his apartment until his arrest after months of investigation. The case finally reached trial on December 22, 2015. The Shenzhen Intermediate People's Court sentenced Hang Pheasant to death with a 2-year reprieve, stripping him of political rights and confiscating all personal assets. The reprieve was granted because he compensated the victim's family, but Jean's relatives strongly opposed the decision. They claimed they were pressured into signing reconciliation papers in a language they barely understood, and they never felt true remorse from Hang or his family, though the case was closed. The horror of Zhang Xinku's fate left a chilling reminder. Danger often hides where we least expect it, but the next case we'll examine is even stranger, not just because of its brutality, but because the killers, after committing murder, became overnight celebrities on social media, gathering fans instead of condemnation. This disturbing case took place in Konkan Province, northeastern Thailand. In 2017, the couple's marriage seemed enviable, although the husband often traveled for work. He always devoted time to his wife upon returning. Their life together was tender and affectionate, admired by those around them, but in the spring of 2017, everything changed. On the morning of May 25th, a farmer in the Konkan province went mushroom picking in the forest. He noticed 3 large metal sheets lying across a patch of dry grass and thought the damp ground beneath them might yield mushrooms. As he approached, an overpowering stench filled the air. Holding his breath, he lifted one of the sheets. Beneath it lay 2 plastic containers inside a shallow pit. Driven by curiosity, he opened a black plastic bag from one of the containers only to recoil in horror. Inside were dismembered human remains, shaken. He fled the scene and immediately called police. Investigators soon arrived. Sealing off the area, they recovered the containers, which held the mutilated body of a woman. Forensics revealed she had been strangled, cut in half at the waist, with her arms severed and organs missing. The condition of the body suggested death had occurred between May 23rd and 24th, despite decomposition. Her face and a butterfly tattoo helped confirm her identity. 32-year-old Warasara Clinchwiabar, hostess who had been reported missing just a day earlier. At first glance, Warasara's life appeared stable. She had recently married and was thought to be in a happy relationship, but as police dug deeper, secrets surfaced. Her hostess job extended beyond entertaining customers. She engaged in prostitution, maintained multiple relationships, and even continued a same-sex affair with a woman named Suda after her marriage. With this revelation, investigators focused on 2 suspects, Warasara's husband, Sakai, and her lover, Suda. Media coverage exploded, portraying the case as a sensational lesbian love triangle. Suda was questioned first. She explained that she hadn't been able to reach Warasara since May 22nd. On the 24th, she had even contacted Warasara's mother, who told her that Sakai had been away for work since May 20th. Suda cooperated fully and provided a strong alibi, leading police to clear her as a suspect. She, however, pointed suspicion back at Sakai, suggesting he might have staged a business trip, murdered his wife, and then traveled afterward to cover his tracks. When informed of his wife's death, Sakai rushed home. He told investigators he had indeed left for work on May 20th and had only learned of his wife's infidelity after reading about it in the news. Surveillance footage and co-workers confirmed his presence at a construction site. Throughout that week, his alibi held, and police ruled him out with both key suspects eliminated. The case stalled. The love triangle theory collapsed, leaving investigators grasping for leads. Then, a breakthrough emerged. Surveillance cameras showed Warasara alive on May 23rd that afternoon. She was captured using an ATM before entering a car with an unidentified man. That was the last time she was seen alive. Facial recognition and license plate scans confirmed the suspect, Wasan Ram, a 22-year-old bartender who worked with the victim. The car was a rental. Heading toward the border, police issued a nationwide arrest warrant on May 27, 2017. Wasan and his 21-year-old wife, Jitter Praman, were arrested in Jitter's handbag. Police found Warasara's phone, which they planned to sell. Wasan confessed, admitting he was involved but insisted his wife only disposed of belongings. He claimed the real killers were 3 women from the same bar. According to him, Prux strangled Warasara with a plastic bag, while the other 2 pinned her down after her death. They calmly discussed disposal. They bought a saw, garbage bags, plastic containers, and metal sheets, renting a room at an ecotourism farm. They dismembered the body, packed the remains into containers, and buried them in a forest. Under the sheets was and drove his wife to Laos, instructing her to destroy Warasara's belongings. While the 3 women fled to Myanmar, news of the crime shocked Thailand. The alleged mastermind, Priya Yank, quickly became infamous as the sweet killer. Instead of hiding, the women posted selfies online, flaunting their freedom. Young fans began idolizing Priya. Her clothes became fashion trends while critics demanded harsh punishment. A week later, Thai and Myanmar police tracked them to Tachi Lake. A border town surveillance caught them strolling casually in public surrounded. They voluntarily surrendered, hoping cooperation would reduce their sentences, but their return to Thailand caused outrage. Escorted by police without handcuffs, they laughed and joked, treated more like celebrities than killers. Officers even offered them snacks, posed for photos, and allowed them to use phones and apply makeup in custody. The victim's mother expressed fury. "I cannot accept that my daughter's killers are being treated so well." Police defended themselves, claiming the women were still suspects with legal rights. Yet the special treatment, snacks, selfies, and smiles turned a brutal murder case into a disturbing media spectacle. At the press conference, the 3 culprits openly recounted the entire crime, while their confessions mirrored Wasim's testimony. Hearing the chilling details directly from the perpetrators left an even stronger impact. Sensational keywords like newlyweds, bar hostess, dismemberment, prostitution, infidelity, lesbian love triangle, sweet killer, and facial mask dominated headlines. The bizarre combination of these terms skyrocketed the case's popularity. Even the handbag carried by the women at the time of their arrest became a trendy fashion item, while the saw used in the killing was turned into a novelty keychain and sold in shops. However, public interest eventually began to fade then. On December 3, 2017, months after the crime trial opened at the Kon Kon Provincial Court, Pranak, Kanda, and Wasim faced charges of murder, while Jidat, Wasim's wife, was only charged with theft under Thai criminal law. The maximum penalty for murder is death. Inside the courtroom, the victim's mother held a photo of her daughter, lit incense, and prayed for justice. Phones were prohibited. Yet a Facebook post soon surfaced, showing Pranak messaging a friend, "I'm in court, and I'm grateful you haven't abandoned me, even though you know I'm a suspect." Shockingly, the post also included a photo of the 3 women making heart shapes with their hands and taking selfies inside the courtroom. Their carefree attitude contrasted sharply with the grief of the victim's family. Waiting outside, social media exploded. With outrage, many condemned the killer's arrogance, while others raised concerns about Thailand's justice system. Strangely, some fans of Pranuk celebrated the behavior as a symbol of rebellion, even claiming the women were innocent. The trial, the prosecutor argued the murder was deliberate, noting the defendants had shown contempt for the court and deserved severe punishment. The defense countered, claiming they had not planned to kill, only to teach the victim a lesson, but lost control after she allegedly threatened them. They further argued that turning themselves in showed remorse and warranted leniency. Pranak herself testified, "We never meant to kill her. I feel guilty and haven't slept well since. I'll accept any sentence if it eases my conscience." The judge acknowledged the crime as brutal and deserving of life imprisonment. However, because the women confessed and cooperated with the investigation, their sentences were reduced. Pranak and Kanda received 34 years and 6 months. Apan received 33 years and 9 months. Wasim was sentenced to 23 years, 4 months, and 20 days. And Jidat received 1 year for theft. 4 main culprits were also ordered to compensate the victim's family with 11 million baht, around $32,500, although the case was legally closed. Its impact lingered. Many of Pranok's loyal fans rejected the verdict, demanding lighter sentences. Psychologists later explained her popularity, her striking appearance, social media presence, and the case's dramatic twists made her a fascination for the public in interviews. Her sister tearfully defended her from the start. The media painted my sister as a cruel monster. Even our family was attacked. Only in court was it proven she didn't plan the murder. I just hope people stop judging based on one-sided stories and give her a chance to make amends. But for the victim, Morasara, there was no second chance. At just 32 years old, her life was brutally stolen. After filing the missing person report, Wang Jae's mother and sister returned home. Cases like this weren't unusual, especially with teenagers, but the police still logged it officially and assigned the new territory's missing persons investigation unit to handle it. Wang Jae, originally from Shino, Hunan, was the younger of 2 sisters. Her elder sister, Bing, was 3 years older. Both carried their mother's surname when Wang Jae was only 3. Her parents divorced. Her mother later remarried a 50-year-old Hong Kong man named Chin to Wang Jae. Her stepfather had little value beyond his Hong Kong residency. He was unemployed and idle, hardly someone her mother should respect. In 2000, her mother decided to move with Bing to Hong Kong, leaving the much younger Wang Jae behind. Reports conflicted about where she stayed. Some claimed she remained in Shino. Others said she was sent to Dingin to be looked after by relatives. Whatever the truth, her early years were marked by loneliness and a lack of parental affection. By 2005, at the age of 14, she was finally brought to Hong Kong to reunite with her mother, sister, and stepfather. The family lived in poverty. Her mother supported them by collecting trash. When Wang Jae first arrived, she was amazed by the bustling city. She enrolled at Samutai Secondary School alongside her sister. Academically, Wang Jae excelled. She won the Purple Gold Award for outstanding performance in math, Chinese, or English, and also received prizes in Mandarin and English recitation contests, earning scholarships 2 years in a row. Yet, her personality set her apart. Classmates found her withdrawn, stubborn, and quiet at home. Her relationship with her stepfather was strained. Arguments were common. In 2007, she joined a modeling course, but her plain appearance brought few opportunities to save face. She lied to her family, claiming to work as an assistant model, earning 20,000 Hong Kong dollars, 30,000 monthly, though she soon quit. Jae loved fashion and beauty, sharing clothes with Bing and even attending a makeup course together. But in January 2008, as a 10th grader, she shocked her family by saying she wanted to drop out of school, believing education was pointless. She ignored her mother and sister's objections and left school. From then on, her lifestyle unraveled. She spent more time in entertainment venues, mingled with strangers, and often stayed out overnight. When the police searched her room after her disappearance, they uncovered a hidden life on her computer. She had accounts on adult forums, posting provocative photos and advertising her services, even listing prices. She also used ICQ accounts to communicate with clients. Records showed that on April 13th, she posted online before meeting a client late at night. A week later, someone left a review of her services. Sometimes, she also offered companionship shopping trips or walks with clients. Her family, however, knew none of this. Bing told investigators, "We were very close and shared everything. But lately she seemed troubled, hiding something from me." She noticed her sister had new friends, men aged 20 to 50, who called her late at night. When questioned, Wang Jae only said she had a boyfriend, though she never introduced him. Concerned, the police publicized the case to gather clues. On May 2nd, a man named Aang came forward. He described himself as a programmer and admitted he was a regular client. He had first found Wang Jae through the forum in April 2008. On April 20th, he paid 1,500 Hong Kong dollars, about 192 United States dollars, to meet her afterwards. They became closer, often chatting online on April 27th, in the early hours of the morning. He arranged to see her again. They met at Sham Shui Post Station that evening. Wang Jie was dressed in black and carrying a yellow bag together. They went to a nearby hotel. She seemed exhausted, so instead of seeking intimacy, Ying simply talked with her. The two eventually drifted off to sleep, side by side around 9 a.m. the next morning. Wang Jie left the hotel with a bing. He paid her 2,000 Hong Kong dollars, about $256, and promised to meet again, but after that day, he could never reach her through ICQ or phone. In May 2nd, when a bing saw the news of her disappearance, he rushed to the police since he was the last known person to see her alive. He instantly became the prime suspect, yet investigators soon confirmed his alibi that night in the hotel. Wang Jie had confided that she was working desperately to pay off a massive debt. She'd been scammed by a modeling agency, losing money instead of earning it. Tan still owed $10,000 Hong Kong dollars in interest. The company threatened to release sensitive videos if she failed to pay. Trapped, she was forced to meet multiple clients. Police speculated that after leaving a bing, she went to see another man. Her call records showed her last phone call at 1:04 p.m. On April 27th at Sham Shui Post Station. The call lasted 53 seconds to an unregistered prepaid phone tracing ICQ messages. Investigators found they had been sent from the Yen Fat building near the station. Then, on May 6th, a man named Day came forward. Visibly shaken, he claimed his friend, 24-year-old Ding Chi Tai, had confessed to murdering a girl. According to Day, Ding said that while having sex, the woman repeatedly muttered she wanted to die. In a twisted response, he strangled her, then dismembered the body. He told Day he skinned her face, stuffed her bones in a pig bone container, and discarded other parts in grotesque ways. Horrified, Day dismissed it as drug-fueled nonsense. Since until news of Wang Jie's disappearance surfaced, the details matched too closely. Police moved in Ding's apartment in the Yen Fat building, revealed bloodstains on walls, carpet, even a CD inside his computer. DNA confirmed it belonged to Wang Jie. Ding confessed he had cut her body into pieces, flushed some down the toilet, and mixed others with pig bones at a local pork stall. The revelation sent shockwaves across Hong Kong. Customers feared they may have unknowingly consumed human remains. It was one of the most chilling and gruesome crimes in the city's history. The pork stall incident caused widespread panic among residents. Rumors spread online that Wang Jie had gone to the Yen Fat building on the day of the crime to attend a sex party with Ding Chi Tai and others. Some claimed she overdosed on drugs, and to avoid punishment, Ding and his friend Hui dismembered her body before dumping the remains at sea and at a pork stall. However, police later confirmed these claims were false. Hui had a reliable alibi and was not involved. Despite Ding's initial accusations, the real events unfolded differently. After leaving a bar at 7 a.m., Ding continued using drugs at home hours. Later, still high and restless, he contacted Wang Jie. They met after 1 p.m., used more drugs, and had sex in his apartment. By 3 p.m., Ding awoke to find Wang Jie dead, her body cold, with bloody foam at her mouth. He vaguely recalled strangling her for 1 to 2 minutes, but claimed he could not remember the full details within minutes. Panic gave way to calculation. Ding decided to dismember her body, believing it would make detection harder. The process took him 6 hours. Just draining the blood lasted up to 15 minutes. Struggling to remove both flesh and skin at once, he adopted the method of skinning first, then cutting away the flesh. Similar to butchering pigs, he cut the body into small pieces, flushing many down the toilet in batches. Fingers and toes were flushed separately, one by one, to avoid clogging. By 10 p.m., Ding processed larger bones like the spine and limbs, stripping them of flesh so they would resemble pork bones. He later dumped portions of the remains at a pork stall on Shek Kip May Street, while carrying the victim's head by bus to Kowloon Ferry Pier and throwing it into the sea. Despite the brutality, Ding carried on with his daily life, as if nothing happened, eating out and making phone calls, which eventually helped police trace him when questioned. He denied having any experience in anatomy or butchery, and denied taking photos of the dismemberment. His choice to travel by bus with the victim's head was deliberate, believing it would attract less suspicion than other methods. Psychiatrists from Castle Peak Hospital later examined him. Ding revealed a troubled past, treated for mental illness at age 8, buying sex at 15, taking drugs by 2001, and obsessively viewing pornography by 2002. Some experts speculated he might have experienced automatism, an epileptic-like state where a person unconsciously performs violent acts without memory afterward, but others dismissed this, noting there is no medical evidence of drug use causing such a condition. Meanwhile, police faced another challenge, recovering body parts flushed into the sewage system. The building's wastewater flowed through septic tanks and a massive treatment plant before reaching the sea, making recovery nearly impossible. Still, residents near the crime scene reported a foul, rotting odor from drainage pipes on May 8th. Drainage workers dredged a manhole and discovered over 20 pieces of flesh. DNA tests confirmed they belonged to Wang Jia. Her head, however, was never recovered despite extensive searches at the pier. Ding Chi, 24, stood 5 feet 10 and weighed over 200 pounds, born in Hong Kong as the second child in his family. His childhood was marked by rebellion, fights, and tragedy. At age 5, during a family trip to mainland China, he was in a devastating car accident. Not only did he sustain a brain injury, but he also witnessed his mother's death. His maternal relatives blamed his father for the tragedy, sowing deep family resentment. 2 years later, Ding's father, after remarrying, Ding Chai's family moved to Nansen Village, where life appeared harmonious, but beneath the surface, trouble was brewing. By age 8, his hot temper and learning difficulties pushed his family to seek medical help. A hospital diagnosed him with an emotional disorder, and he was placed in a special school for children with disabilities as a teenager. Between 15 and 16, his aggression escalated after assaulting others. He was sent to a reform school for psychological counseling. He never finished school, dropping out by 6th grade afterward. Ding Chai worked odd jobs as a nightclub delivery boy, and later as an apprentice, installing air conditioners, but the glittering nightlife seduced him. He fell deep into drugs, vomiting blood, suffering nosebleeds, yet craving more even while in a relationship. He frequently visited prostitutes at the nightclub. His salary was over 4,000 Hong Kong dollars a month, around $512, but within half a year, he quit with bleached blonde hair and a chubby build. He became known as Fat Thai. He bragged about prostitutes, picked fights over money, and lived like a thug. Colleagues recalled him as a lazy braggart, obsessed only with pleasure. Money slipped through his fingers like water to feed his lifestyle. He borrowed recklessly 60,000 Hong Kong dollars, about $7,680. Then, another 200,000, around $25,600. When he defaulted, debt collectors came knocking to escape. He fled his home. According to his close friend, A.D., Ding Chai was clever, but volatile, quick to anger, constantly cursing. In June 2007, at age 23, Ding Chai rented a small apartment on the second floor of the Yen Fat building for 2,000 Hong Kong dollars a month. That flat would later become the scene of one of Hong Kong's most gruesome crimes. A year later, in July 2009, the trial began. At the High Court, Ding Chai faced charges of murder and preventing the lawful burial of a corpse. He admitted everything after 6 days. The verdict was delivered: guilty of murder. Life imprisonment. An additional 4-year sentence was added for preventing burial, but the final sentence remained life behind bars. Later that year, a Daitha friend who reported Ding Chai's crime was honored with the Outstanding Citizen Award. Yet, when standing on stage, Odd admitted, "My feelings are complicated. Ding Chai really did kill someone sometimes. I can't sleep at night." In 2015, the film Port of Call, based on this case, reignited public debate, though the Wang Jiamei case was legally closed. Its horror-haunted Hong Kong, her tragic death was a chilling reminder that behind the neon lights of prosperity, shadows of violence still lurk. It was a lesson about love, care, and the responsibility of every family and citizen to nurture a safe, healthy society despite their struggles. Little Wang Na was always full of joy. At just 7 years old, she became the light of her mother's life, helping at the market and brightening the days of regular customers with her cheerful smile. Aware of her family's hardships, she never asked for toys or luxuries. Instead, she often reassured her mother, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll study hard and become a doctor one day, then you won't have to work so hard." But fate had other plans. On September 27, 2004. After celebrating Wang Na's birthday, her mother, Hang Sheng, packed her bags for a short trip to Fuan to visit her younger child, since it was normal for the two to be apart. Wang Na stayed behind in Singapore to continue school. She was independent for her age, managing her meals, going to public bathhouses, even traveling alone for summer vacations before leaving. Her mother entrusted her to a roommate, Li Suan, and gave Wang Na 100 Singapore dollars for expenses. Nearly 2 weeks later, on October 10th, Wang Na asked her aunt if she could call her mom around 1:30 p.m. She went alone to a nearby payphone, excited. She told her mother all about the past days, even asking for an English dictionary and new sandals. Her mother promised to bring them on her return. Neither knew this 6-minute call would be their last conversation. By 2:30 p.m., an hour later, Wang Na still hadn't returned. Her aunt grew uneasy and went to check the payphone, but the girl was gone. Panic set in. Friends and neighbors joined the desperate search, but by nightfall, there was still no trace. The police were called, and Wang Na's mother rushed back from Fuan. On the earliest flight, the investigation began immediately. Witnesses described seeing Wang Na that afternoon in her jacket and blue shorts, but, oddly, she wasn't wearing shoes. A cafe worker remembered asking why, but the little girl only smiled and skipped away. Others reported seeing her with a familiar young man in his early 20s, simple worker who packed goods at the wholesale market. He often spent time with Wang Na, treating her like a niece. His name was to L.A. When questioned, he admitted seeing her that day and said he had even given her to Mangozan the morning after her daughter vanished. The police released a young man who had been under their radar. His manner was calm, cooperative, even disarmingly honest. He showed no signs of deception. His story was simple, his eyes steady, and his tone convincing enough that officers gradually dismissed their suspicions. They allowed him to walk free and return home, but outside the walls of the police station, desperation was building while investigators combed through leads. Wang Na's mother was waging her own war against time and despair. From the moment she landed in Singapore on October 12th, she refused to rest. She printed stacks upon stacks of flyers bearing her daughter's face, staring out from the grainy photograph. A child frozen in innocence. With trembling hands, she handed them to strangers in the streets, her voice cracking each time she asked, "Have you seen this girl? Please, anything. Have you seen her?" She did not limit her search to the city's crowded avenues every day. She forced her weary body through industrial zones, across construction sites, and into the shadows of water pipes. She moved like a woman possessed, from dawn until deep past midnight, her legs aching but her will unbroken. Sleep became a forgotten luxury. Food was reduced to hurried bites of bread or sips of tea. Consumed on the move, all that fueled her was a fragile thread of hope, the faint, impossible hope that her daughter might still be alive, waiting to be found. Then, something strange happened one evening. A niece called her, her voice hesitant, carrying a message from the otherworldly. She had dreamed of Wang Na, dreamed that the girl was trapped on a mountain, calling for help in ordinary times. Perhaps it would have been dismissed as nothing more than the subconscious weaving fear into imagery, but in Wang Na's mother's fragile state, she could not ignore it. And so, despite exhaustion, despite the futility, she climbed mountains in search of her daughter, clinging to that dream as though it were a map. She carried Wang Na's favorite teddy bear with her, clutching it tightly during each search. That bear became a symbol, not of comfort, but of determination. If she can see me, she thought, if she can sense me, she'll know I won't stop until I bring her home. Her desperation struck a chord with the public. She was no longer alone in her search. Reporters followed her story. Strangers offered to help, and soon, her private tragedy transformed into a national concern. Businessmen, retirees, taxi drivers, people from every walk of life joined the search effort. Entire neighborhoods rallied. The story of a mother refusing to give up on her child spread like wildfire within days. Thousands were involved. Flyers multiplied 70,000 in total. Posters adorned the walls of restaurants, schools, and bus stops. Taxi drivers kept stacks in their cars, offering them to passengers even across the border. Malaysia joined in. Some restaurants there displayed Wang Na's photo, urging patrons to keep their eyes open. The campaign grew larger by the hour. A businessman offered $10,000 Singapore dollars as a reward for any lead. Another citizen added $5,000 to the pot. Hope surged, but results did not. Despite the sweeping, unprecedented effort, not a single trace of Wang Na emerged. It was as if she had been swallowed by the earth itself. The police, sensing their investigation had reached a dead end, decided to revisit every lead. Every person connected to the case would be every testimony scrutinized, and at the center of their renewed interest was one man, Tuck Lung Hao. When they summoned him for questioning a second time, everything changed. The calm, cooperative demeanor that had earned him freedom before was gone. This time, he told a different story. His words were chilling. "I know where Wang Na is," he confessed. He claimed she had been kidnapped not by him, but by a group of 3 or 4 Chinese men. They had taken her as an act of revenge, he alleged, because of conflicts Wang Na's mother had with others at the market. He even offered to help negotiate with them, to use his connections to reach out and secure her release. But there was a catch. He explained that, because the police had summoned him so early, he hadn't brought his phone. He needed to go home to retrieve it. If he were to contact the kidnappers, it was a risky request. The officers were skeptical, but they agreed. They assigned 2 escorts to accompany him back to his residence. After retrieving his phone, they placed him in a car, preparing to bring him back to the station for a lie detector test. And that's when everything unraveled. Halfway through the ride, he asked for a stop at a restaurant on Pasir Panjang Road. He said he was hungry. The officers, seeing no harm, allowed it. He walked inside calmly, asked to use the restroom, and vanished. Minutes ticked by. 10:15. The officers exchanged nervous glances. Finally, one knocked on the door. No answer. They pushed it open. A panic erupted. They had been duped. Sirens blared as reinforcements scrambled. Checkpoints were set up, roads sealed, and patrol units flooded the area. But it was useless. Tuck Lung Hao had disappeared without a trace, and with his escape, suspicion solidified. If he were truly innocent, why run? But to understand the man who now sat at the heart of Singapore's most infamous missing person case, one must step back to his beginnings, to his past, to the life that shaped him. Who was Tuck Lung Hao? Born on December 16, 1981, in Penang, Malaysia, Tuck was the second of 4 children in a struggling family. Poverty defined his early years. Opportunities were scarce, and by the time he was 8, he had already decided to leave home. Singapore, with its promise of jobs and prosperity, became his destination. But dreams do not always align with reality. Without qualifications, without money, and without guidance, the young boy could only find menial labor. Construction sites, warehouses, and back-breaking odd jobs filled his teenage years. Over time, he hardened not just physically, but mentally. As a young adult, he met a Chinese-Indonesian woman. They married quickly, as if both were seeking stability in each other. Soon after, they had a son. On the surface, it seemed like Tuck had begun to build a life, but beneath that veneer, cracks widened. Work was inconsistent, money was tight, and tensions brewed in his marriage. It was during this period that he met Wang Na and her mother. The Two women had moved to Singapore and rented a small room in the same building where Tuck lived slowly. Proximity blossomed into familiarity. Tuck became something of an uncle to Wang Na. He often rode his motorcycle to pick her up, took her out for meals, and even bought her small gifts. She adored him, and he basked in her trust. Her mother, too, grew fond of him. He seemed kind, reliable, almost family, so when the police first suggested that he might be involved in Wang Na's disappearance, her reaction was one of disbelief. No, not him. She repeated there must be a mistake, but mistakes, the police believed, were not theirs, and, after his brazen escape, there was no denying it. The man once trusted like family was now there. Prime suspect the geography of escape. Singapore is the smallest country in Southeast Asia, an island surrounded by water with only one land connection northward, across the causeway into Malaysia. For investigators, the conclusion was immediate. If Tuck had fled, he had almost certainly crossed the border into his homeland. The problem was timing. By the time police realized he was gone, he had already vanished into the crowded arteries of the city, whether by motorcycle, car, or even on foot. He had slipped through once again. The chase was on after Tuck Longhau's escape. Singapore police contacted Malaysian authorities for help. Investigators in Malaysia immediately reached out to his family, including his parents and siblings. His father, then 62 years old, admitted that he had received a phone call from his son shortly after the escape. During that brief conversation, Tuck insisted, "I didn't kidnap Hang Na. I only ran because I couldn't handle the pressure from the police." When officers arrived at the family home, even Tuck's older brother couldn't believe what he was hearing. To him, Tuck was shy, quiet, and incapable of violence. Someone who had never even been in a fight or dared to ask for a loan. The idea that he could abduct a child felt impossible, though. Singapore police then questioned Tuck's wife, who was still living in Singapore. She confirmed what his father had said. Tuck had called her too, insisting on his innocence, but in that call, he revealed a crucial detail. After slipping away from the police, he had taken a taxi to the Singapore-Malaysia border, then continued his journey by bus to Johor, Malaysia. Despite these leads and close cooperation between both countries, no progress was made until October 30th, 10 days after his last interrogation, and 20 days after the crime. Tuck Longhau suddenly surrendered himself to police in Penang, Malaysia. Upon hearing the news, Singapore authorities dispatched a team to bring him back. Realizing there was no escape, Tuck finally confessed on October 31st. Over 20 investigators accompanied him to a hill in Telok Blangah Hill Park, just a 10-minute drive from the wholesale market where Hang Na's mother worked. After half an hour of searching, officers noticed a foul smell near a withered bush. Digging into the shallow earth, they unearthed a taped cardboard box, oily liquid seeping from its corners. The box was rushed to the forensic center. Inside were 9 layers of plastic, concealing the badly decomposed remains of a small child, tragically confirmed through DNA testing to be Hang Na during interrogation. Tuck insisted her death had been an accident. He claimed that, while playing hide-and-seek in a warehouse, he tied her hands and feet, telling her to untie herself as part of the game, but forensic evidence painted a darker picture. Experts concluded the direct cause of death was acute airway obstruction. Her skull showed multiple injuries, and mango fragments in her stomach suggested she died not long after eating. The most disturbing detail emerged when the body was examined. Hang Na was unclothed, and her private area showed clear signs of sexual assault, with visible scratches and bleeding. Yet Tuck continued to deny wrongdoing. In one statement, he said that after tying her up, he heard a loud thud and returned to find her convulsing, vomiting blood, and losing control of her bodily functions. He claimed panic overtook him, and, recalling a first aid method he had seen online, he pressed her neck with his hands and, when that failed, with his foot. She did not survive. As for the injuries to her private area, he gave an unsettling explanation. After failed attempts at first aid, he realized the situation was deteriorating. In panic, he removed her jacket and placed it over her face to hide her wide-open, clouded eyes strangely, though unable to explain why. He also removed her pants tuck lung. Hall later claimed that while patting her back with one hand, the other somehow ended up in her lower body, region uncertain if it was genital or anal. When he withdrew, he noticed heavy bleeding based on his testimony. Police searched the warehouse where he said he and Hang Na had played hide-and-seek, on the 15th floor of the wholesale market, inside a 3-room unit linked to her mother's workplace. They discovered DNA evidence, the victim's hair and blood, cigarette butts with his saliva, adhesive tape bearing his fingerprints, and fibers from both their clothes. This confirmed the warehouse as the crime scene when the trial began at Singapore's High Court. On July 11, 2005, prosecutors charged Tuck Lung Hao with murder. They presented testimony from 76 witnesses, forensic evidence, and even a video reenactment in which he demonstrated his actions according to their case. At about 1:40 p.m. on October 10, 2004, he lured the girl to the warehouse under the guise of playing a game. Once inside, after eating mangoes, he stripped and tied her with rope before sexually assaulting her to silence her. He covered her mouth and nose until she went limp, then stomped and kicked her head to ensure she could not resist. He wrapped her body in 9 layers of plastic, sealed it inside a cardboard box, and around 5:30 p.m., used a borrowed motorcycle to transport it home hours later. He took the box to Telok Blangah Hill Park, where he buried it hastily before returning the motorcycle at 9 p.m., continuing his evening as if nothing had happened throughout the trial. Tuck Lung remained silent. His defense lawyers, however, argued that there was no definitive proof he caused her death. They suggested the victim may have suffocated not from his actions but from aspirating vomit during a seizure, which could have occurred spontaneously, even without a medical history of epilepsy. His legal team also introduced psychiatric testimony, claiming he displayed schizophrenic traits and scored an IQ of only 76, well below Singapore's 2004 average of 105, and beneath the global mean of 83 at the time. Yet the prosecution dismissed this, pointing out that mental impairment is only recognized at IQ levels below 70, and there was no family history of mental illness. They further highlighted his calculated actions, discarding evidence in areas without cameras, sealing the victim's body carefully, lying to police, and even attempting to escape Singapore by stealing a police officer's pass. Witnesses also testified that he had previously tied up another girl at work for being noisy and had physically assaulted Hang Na in the past. These patterns, prosecutors argued, revealed both motive and capability. August 27, 2005. The High Court found him guilty and sentenced him to death. His January 2006 appeal was rejected, and despite his family's plea for presidential clemency, the execution proceeded on November 3, 2006, at Hang Na's funeral. Mourners brought flowers, snacks, and her beloved Hello Kitty toys to bid farewell, but if the story ended there, it would overlook the deep controversy and debates that followed after the case was closed. Instead of fading from public memory, disturbing stories about Hang Na's mother, Hang Shuang, began to surface. Online reports traced back to the time of her divorce from her first husband. At that time, she had entered Singapore on a short-term visa, but overstayed to work illegally. Eventually, she was arrested, sentenced to prison, and deported. However, returning from a developed country like Singapore to the rural outskirts of Fuan with little opportunity for work was unbearable for Hang Shuang. Allegedly, a fellow inmate even advised her to burn off her fingerprints by pressing them against a red-hot iron bar, making it harder for authorities to trace her later. When Singapore introduced policies to attract skilled workers, she reportedly paid 8,000 Singapore dollars to a human trafficking syndicate to re-enter the country illegally. By contrast, her daughter Hang Na, who had no criminal record, was still able to enter Singapore legally. Once this dark past became public, police investigated and confirmed the story to be true. Hang Shuang was forced to return to Fuhan, carrying only her daughter's ashes. Yet, the story did not end. Their online rumors painted a very different picture of her and her husband's life. After returning during the investigation into Hang Na's death, the public had donated generously to the family. It was alleged that the couple used these funds to build a mansion with a large garage on a man-made hill. Along with other luxuries, outrage spread quickly. Many began to support Tukla, believing they had been wrong to side with Heng Shuang. Some even speculated the entire tragedy had been staged. Critics condemned her for being an irresponsible mother, allowing her 8-year-old daughter to live so independently in Singapore while she herself traveled comfortably back to China. In response, Heng Shuang claimed that most of the donations were spent on building a proper resting place for her daughter. She insisted their home was only expanded by 1 floor to overlook Hang Na's grave, and that remaining funds were donated to improve village infrastructure and charitable causes. Still, controversy surrounding the couple only grew, regardless of speculation. One tragic fact remained. Little Hang Na's life was cut short at just 8 years old. Story 5. We continue our series with 3 of the most puzzling and unbelievable cases. The first occurred in Shanxi Province, China, at 9 a.m. on December 16, 2005. Dingbian Town Police received a phone call from a middle-aged woman named Liu Guang. She reported that 2 days earlier, when she returned home in the morning, she discovered several valuable items missing. And, even more concerning, her niece had disappeared 15 minutes later. Police arrived after questioning Liu Guang. They learned that the missing items included a Casio film camera, 2 platinum rings valued at 950 yuan and 700 yuan, and about $100 in cash. While the theft itself was not major, the scene raised suspicions. There were no signs of forced entry or ransacking. Every room was tidy, as though no intruder had entered. The missing person was Liu Guang's distant niece, Qi Ai. According to Liu, Qi had recently started working at a telecommunications company in Dingbian City about 3 months earlier. Since she had not yet found housing, she had been living at Liu's home. On the morning of December 14th, Liu left on a business trip while Qi remained at home. By the time Liu returned, 2 days later, her niece was gone. Liu recalled that around 7 p.m. on December 14th, while she was away, her mother received a call from Qi. The call connected, but Qi never spoke when her mother tried calling back. Kai's phone was switched off. Concerned, she contacted Liu, who also failed to reach her niece at the time. Liu brushed it aside, but when she returned home, the situation had become clear. Qi was missing. Investigators initially suspected Qi herself might have taken the valuables and run away. The evidence suggested someone close to the family was involved, so police began tracing leads tied to her. They believed that once they found Qi, the theft case would be solved. But what they uncovered turned out to be far more shocking than anything they had expected. That same afternoon, Dingbian police visited Kai's workplace. Her supervisor, Ru Fuman, confirmed that Qi had reported to work as usual on December 14th and left around 5:30 p.m. However, the next day she failed to show up. Colleagues tried calling her, but her phone was switched off. Her unexplained disappearance unsettled everyone. What investigators were about to learn would change the course of the entire case. Cal showed no signs of unusual behavior on her last day at work. Dingbian police also learned that although Qi had only been employed at the telecommunications company for less than 3 months, she was receiving her salary regularly. Her fixed monthly income was about $270, and since she was unmarried with no children, her financial situation appeared stable. This raised an important question. Why would she steal from her own aunt? As investigators wrestled with this puzzle, Liu Guowang, the person who first reported the case, contacted the police again. She claimed to have discovered some strange clues while cleaning the house. The officers immediately returned for a second inspection. In the living room stood a large wooden cabinet over 6 feet tall. According to Liu Guowang, there had originally been 2 black suitcases placed on top of it. but now one was missing. This made investigators wonder if Chiai might have taken both her aunt's valuables and the suitcase. To verify this, the police searched Chiai's bedroom. Next to the door stood a smaller wooden cabinet, about 3 feet tall. On top were 2 notable items: a set of keys said to include the front door key and a neatly arranged black handbag inside the bag. Nothing appeared tampered with under her pillow. Police also found her savings book, showing a balance of over $700. These discoveries complicated the case. If Chow had truly stolen the camera and silver rings, why had she left her own money and belongings untouched? The evidence suggested she was not the thief. From the keys and handbag, police deduced 2 facts. First, on the evening of December 14th, after work, Chia did return to her aunt's house. Second, her disappearance did not seem premeditated. Something unexpected must have happened that night. To trace her movements, police contacted her parents. Her father, Xiao Zhang, recalled their last phone call around 5:30 p.m. on December 14th. She spoke normally, showing no signs of distress. Phone records showed 3 calls after work. The first to her father at 5:45 p.m., lasting 13 minutes. The second to Lu Guang's mobile at 6:23 p.m., which went unanswered. And the third to Guang's mother at 6:51 p.m., a call that lasted only 9 seconds. Guang, his mother, later explained she hadn't heard Chia's voice. Instead, she heard the sound of car horns, as though Chia had been standing on a busy street. After that, her phone went dead. Alarmed, investigators began suspecting she had been kidnapped. Meanwhile, the forensic team at Lu Guang's house made a crucial discovery in the bathroom. They found 2 bloodstains, one lodged between the floor tiles and another on the edge of a box beneath the toilet. A larger stain was also detected on a tile behind the bathroom door. DNA testing confirmed all 3 belonged to Chia. As evidence lead police to conclude she had not left voluntarily. She may have been attacked and abducted. A special task force was formed to investigate her social ties and to re-examine the crime scene. Reported hearing nothing unusual on the day of her disappearance. The house was in a quiet, secluded residential area with high surrounding walls, making entry difficult except through the front gate. Unfortunately, the entrance lacked surveillance cameras. However, police learned that the community's main gate was locked at 11 p.m. nightly. After that time, anyone entering or leaving had to alert the guard. Questioned by investigators, the night guard recalled that between 2 o'clock and 3 a.m., a man had knocked to be let in. He described the man as around 5 feet 7, wearing dark clothing and speaking with a regional accent. The darkness prevented him from clearly seeing the man's face, but the detail of his voice and mannerisms stood out in the guard's memory. The security guard estimated the man to be between 20 and 30 years old, although he claimed to be a local resident. The guard had never heard anyone in the neighborhood speak with that kind of accent before. This made his late-night departure appear suspicious. Still, during the hours before and after he left, the guard never saw Chow enter or exit the area, which puzzled investigators. Could it be that she had already left the neighborhood before 11 p.m. that night? Meanwhile, inside Li Gong's apartment, the on-site team uncovered another odd clue. A kitchen knife had gone missing from the drawer. Later, police found it in the dining room, hidden in a secret spot above a wall-mounted cabinet. Li Gong explained that she and her niece rarely cooked, so the knife was usually kept in the drawer. Its strange placement alarmed her even more. Disturbing, the blade carried no fingerprints at all, leading police to believe it had been handled deliberately by someone cautious. The knife was immediately sent to the lab for testing. At the same time, investigators turned their attention to identifying the mysterious man spotted at the residential gate. They began digging into Chow's social connections. Her colleagues described her as introverted and mild-mannered, with few friends at work. Her family confirmed that her daily life was simple. She mostly kept in touch with her parents and her fiancés. Wuzhong, who lived in another city, Wuzhong 26, came from Bok Shaanxi province. He and Chow had held a modest engagement ceremony earlier that year, with plans to marry by the end of 2005. Yet, Investigators soon marked him as a prime suspect. There were 3 reasons. His age and build matched the guard's description. His accent was non-local, and, as Chow's fiancé, he could have easily entered Li Gong's home without raising suspicion too. Officers were dispatched to Bok to verify his alibi. Wu Jun testified that he had been working in the city continuously. Since December 14th, his colleagues confirmed this, effectively clearing him with Wu Jun eliminated. Police broadened their search. They interviewed nearly 100 of Chow's relatives, classmates, and colleagues, but no one seemed linked to the mysterious visitor days past. With no progress, Chow's father and uncle, desperate, gathered relatives and friends to search for her themselves. Investigators then shifted focus to Li Gong's personal life. Divorced. For 2 years, she lived alone in a spacious apartment. While giving her statement, she suddenly recalled someone who had visited her recently, a person who might have had reason to enter the home. She revealed a peculiar detail about her romantic life after her divorce. She turned to online dating through QQ. Over time, she connected with several men and eventually began a relationship with one, Feng Jia, a 28-year-old from Gansu, who lived in Yinchuan. She had even traveled 3 times to visit him through Feng Jia. She also met his neighbor, a young man nicknamed Shodong, who left a strong impression on her. What unsettled her most was that Shodong had come to her home the very night before Chow disappeared. He claimed he had lost his wallet while visiting an online friend and asked to borrow 20 yuan for travel. Li Gong, not thinking much of it, lent him the money, but instead of leaving, Shodong pulled her into the bedroom and shut the door. Sitting in the living room, Li Gong began to feel uneasy. She quickly found an excuse to call Lu Gong back into the room. Seeing this, Shodong left the house abruptly to investigators. This sudden departure was highly suspicious based on Li Gong's description. His accent, age, and height. Shodong closely matched the guard's earlier account. He immediately became the prime suspect. Acting quickly, 3 officers were dispatched to Yinchuan to track him down. They soon located the rental house where Shodong had been staying, but his neighbor, Feng Ji, revealed he had moved out a few days earlier. Nobody knew his true identity. Residents only called him Shodong because of his regional accent. However, Feng Jia provided one critical lead. Shodong once brought a girlfriend home. Her name was Xiaoping. From the Ningxia Autonomous Region, she had visited multiple times and seemed to work in the entertainment industry. With this clue, the Dingbian police, assisted by Yinchuan authorities, launched a 5-day search of local entertainment venues, but neither Shodong nor Xiaoping could be found. The police then traveled to Xiaoping's hometown, where they located her parents. Her parents revealed she had left the village 2 years ago and had not returned. The last contact was during Lunar New Year, when she called, saying, "I'm working in the Yuan area. Don't worry." They had no idea where she was now. Investigators left their contact details and returned empty-handed with no breakthroughs. The case stalled. A reward notice was issued, but months passed without progress. Whenever news of a female homicide surfaced in Shanxi province, Chai's father and uncle traveled to investigate, hoping for answers, but more than a year went by with no results. Eventually, even the police shifted focus to other cases. Then, 3 years later, a sudden breakthrough. The Dingbian police received a call from none other than Xiaoping's father. His daughter had returned home. Investigators rushed to question her. At first, Xiaoping was reluctant to talk, refusing to reveal her ex-boyfriend's true name, but after patient persuasion, she finally broke her silence. She revealed that Shodong was actually Quan Wei, 30 years old, officially registered in Henan province, though his birthplace was listed as Hongjiang. Matching his accent pressed further. Xiaoping disclosed a chilling secret. She explained that in early 2003, while working in Henan, she rented an apartment near a girl named Dan. Through her, Xiaoping met Quan Wei soon. The 3 became close, and eventually, Xiaoping and Quan Wei began living together. But in May 2003, while Xiaoping was away on a business trip, tragedy struck. After 6 days, she returned home and discovered Dan dead hidden under the bed. Quan Wei had also vanished, terrified. Xiaoping fled days later. She returned for her belongings, but was shocked to find Dan's body gone. She suspected Quan Wei, but fear kept her silent. A month later, Quan Wei resurfaced, pleading with her to continue their relationship out of fear. She agreed. Though they no longer lived together, they saw each other occasionally until late 2005. When an argument erupted, Quan Wei disappeared again. A week later, he suddenly reappeared, warning her, "If anyone asks about me, say nothing. I'm returning to Henan for a startup project. Once I succeed, I'll come back for you." Naively, Xiaoping believed him for months. She continued to wait, working at an amusement park, occasionally speaking to him by phone, but 6 months later, his phone went completely dead and Quan Wei vanished without a trace. Once more Quan Wei's phone suddenly went unreachable. Xiao Feng told police she had gone to Weiyang, Hunan province, searching for him, but he had seemingly vanished. Locals claimed to know nothing of his whereabouts. After verifying this, investigators suspected that Quan Wei's disappearance in December 2005 was likely tied to Charlie's case with help from Hunan police. His whereabouts were soon uncovered. In 2006, Dingbayan officers found that Quan Wei had already been sentenced to 8 years in prison for rape and was still incarcerated. However, one officer noticed something strange in the sentencing record. It stated that Hunan police arrested Quan Wei on August 2, 2005, and that in October 2005 the Weiyang City People's Court officially sentenced him to 8 years, with his prison term starting retroactively from August 2, 2005. But Charlie disappeared on December 14, 2005, 4 months after Quan Wei was already in custody. It was impossible for him to have traveled to Shanji to commit the crime this raised a troubling question. Could Zhao Dongbi, the man previously involved with Zhao Feng, actually be Quan Wei, who was supposedly in prison? Or was Zhao Feng misleading the police? To test this, investigators brought a photo of Quan Wei for Zhao Feng to identify. She confirmed it was indeed Zhao Dongbi, her former boyfriend. The same photo was shown to Lu Guang and her boyfriend Feng Jia, and both confirmed it was also Zhao Dongbi. Investigators were baffled. The lead they hoped would break the case only deepened the mystery. Determined, Dingbian police sent more officers to Hunan province. There, a neighbor provided a crucial clue. Quan Wei's parents once worked at a factory and had twin sons. The elder, Quan Wei, and the younger, Quan Kia, both caused trouble in their youth, eventually forcing their parents to sell their home and move back to Heilongjiang province. The brothers looked nearly identical in face, height, and build, almost impossible for outsiders to distinguish, but relatives knew a secret. Quan Kia was missing 2 joints on his left pinky finger, while Quan Wei's was intact. Armed with this, police quietly obtained fingerprints from the man in prison. The results revealed the truth. The inmate was missing 2 joints on his left pinky. It wasn't Quan Wei at all, but his twin brother Quan Kia. Would Quan Kia serve time in place of his brother? Investigators learned that in 1995, Quan Kia was sentenced to 5 years for theft, released in 2000, then rearrested in 2005 for rape, because repeat offenders face harsher penalties. He used his brother's identity to avoid a heavier sentence. During interrogation, Quan Kia confessed to the identity switch, but where was the real Quan Wei? Searching through Weiyang yielded nothing, since their parents had returned to Heilongjiang. Police investigated there and discovered the shocking twist. Quan Wei had been living under his brother's name. In March 2007, he was arrested for theft in Heilongjiang and pretended to be Quan Kia. He was sentenced to 10 years under his brother's identity after more than 3 years of investigation. Police had finally tracked down the prime suspect, but without direct evidence tying him to Charlie's murder. They couldn't move. Reviewing old files, they found no fingerprints or hair left at the scene. The only clue was a kitchen knife moved from its place, but it had been wiped clean of all forensic traces on September 28, 2011, Dingbian police invited veteran investigator Gao Jinlei out of retirement together. They revisited the prison in Halungjong, this time interrogating Quan Wei himself. He resisted fiercely and refused to reveal anything immediately after. Police collected his investigators, discovered fingerprints and a blood trace that immediately unsettled the suspect on closer review. A faint blood stain on the bathroom wall, partly hidden behind the door, drew the team's attention. With years of forensic experience, Officer Gag Zhenli proposed a theory. The scattered pattern suggested a mop had been used to wipe blood from the tiles. Testing confirmed this, indicating that the killer had cleaned the crime scene with a dark red mop. Although the mop itself was thoroughly washed, it became clear that a large volume of blood had once covered the bathroom. The knife recovered at the scene also carried peculiar evidence. Its blade was dented in several places, as if it had struck bone and bent due to poor quality steel combined with the missing suitcase. Police suspected the victim, Xia, missing for years, had been dismembered and hidden inside it before being removed. Unfortunately, more than 6 years had passed. The house had changed owners multiple times, and crucial traces had already been lost. Still, Zhenli remained fixated on the damaged knife. He suspected that, while the blade had been wiped clean, the handle and guard might hold hidden evidence. In December 2011, the knife was sent for advanced testing at the Forensic Center in Shaanxi Province. There, specialists uncovered 2 small pieces of skin tissue wedged between the handle and guard. DNA analysis confirmed with 999% certainty that the cells belonged to Quan Wei. The prime suspect. Police immediately brought Quan Wei for interrogation. At first, he denied everything, insisting he was someone else named Quan Chia, and refusing to discuss his family background when confronted with the DNA match. However, his resistance collapsed after 2 hours. He admitted his true identity. Quan Wei finally confessed to the murder of Chia Winding II. December 11, 2005. After an argument with his girlfriend, Xiao Feng, in Yinchuan City, Quan Wei returned to his rental room. He planned to meet an online friend in Dingbian County, but, upon arriving by bus, had his phone and wallet stolen. Desperate, he went to borrow money from an acquaintance. Lu Guanglu gave him 20 yuan inside. Quan began chatting with Lu's girlfriend Qiai, but when Qiai made cutting remarks about him scamming money, his temper exploded in a fit of rage. He strangled her to death. Panicked, he devised a cover-up. He bought garbage bags from a nearby shop, dismembered the body with a kitchen knife, and stuffed the remains into a black suitcase around 2 a.m. After thoroughly scrubbing the scene, he stole jewelry and a camera from the house before leaving that night. He disposed of Chiai's clothes in a roadside bin, tossed the suitcase near a canal, and dumped her remains into an abandoned well. Years later, Quan Wei led investigators back to the location. The area had since been developed into a coal plant, but the well was eventually found. Inside lay the decomposed remains of Chiai, along with a black hairpin that her friend Lu confirmed as hers after 6 years of uncertainty. The grim truth had finally surfaced, closing one of Dingbian County's most haunting cold cases. The brutal home invasion murder finally reached its conclusion on June 27, 2013. That morning, the Intermediate People's Court of Shaanxi Province held the trial of Quan Wei as prosecutors recounted the horrific details of how Zhou was killed. Zhou's father broke down in tears on the defendant's bench. Quan Wei kept his head bowed, repeatedly apologizing to the victim's family, despite begging for a chance at rehabilitation. The jury delivered its verdict after 3 hours of deliberation. Quan Wei was sentenced to death for robbery and premeditated murder. He was stripped of political rights for life, all personal assets confiscated, and ordered to pay 10,000 yuan in compensation to Zhou's parents. In January 22, 2015, the death sentence was carried out, closing a case that had dragged on for nearly a decade, marked by twists, delays, and heartbreak. But, as that chapter closed, a new and even more disturbing case began. This time, in Guangxi province, near the First People's Hospital of Yulin City. The area was packed with rundown, makeshift buildings, cheap housing for those who couldn't afford better but wanted to live near the hospital. On March 22, 2020, a nurse living on the second floor noticed her drain was clogged. She called her boyfriend, a local police officer, and together they contacted the landlord. When the pipe was opened, they pulled out something shocking: chunks of ground meat. Too much to make sense in this poor community. Wasting food seemed unthinkable, but something about this meat didn't look right. The landlord, suspicious, immediately called the police. When officers arrived, they extracted 2,368 pieces of ground flesh from the pipes. Testing confirmed the nightmare. It was human tissue. The investigation led them to a third-floor apartment. Inside, police found an electric cooker and a black plastic bag filled with human bones. The horror was undeniable, but the biggest shock came when the tenant was arrested. Not a hardened criminal, not a fugitive, but a young nurse named Feng Ning. Fragile, quiet, and seemingly innocent. No one could believe she was behind such a monstrous act, but was she? Or was there more to the story? Feng Ning was born in 1995 in Bai County, Guangxi, into a poor and struggling family, the eldest of 4 children. She grew up caring for her ill mother, cooking, studying, and raising her siblings while excelling in school. Despite poverty, she earned scholarships and, in 2017, graduated from Guangxi Medical University, offered jobs in 3 hospitals. She chose Yulin not for money or prestige, but because it was closest to home, so she could visit her sick mother. But reality betrayed her plans. Her job demanded endless rotations across hospital departments. Each transfer meant starting over from scratch, performing the lowest tasks, while often having to pay hidden fees. To secure her place, her salary ranged from 2,000 to 3,000 yuan, only later rising to 7,000 to 8,000. Yet every time she was reassigned, she lost progress. The pressure mounted. By June 2018, Feng Ning was transferred from the neonatal unit to spine surgery and orthopedics during a lonely night shift. A colleague introduced her to what seemed like a casual lottery game, but in reality, it was the start of her downfall. When Feng first discovered the gambling game, she thought it would be a harmless way to have fun and maybe even make a little extra money. What she didn't realize was that it would mark the beginning of a devastating downward spiral. The game required no registration, no personal information, just a phone and a bet. At first, it seemed easy. The system let players win the first few rounds, luring them into a false sense of security, but the real trap was hidden. To actually profit, one had to keep winning repeatedly, just to cover previous bets. Most players never noticed the setup until it was too late. Feng was quickly hooked. Bets became larger. Money lost its meaning, and in a single round, she could lose tens of thousands of yuan, even on her lucky days. She would only break even. Her biggest winning streak earned her 100,000 yuan, but the truth was clear. In this game, there were no true winners. Within a year, Feng had funneled nearly 29 million yuan through 2 bank accounts into the platform for a young nurse who had only been working 1 year. It was a staggering, impossible sum. Desperate, she began borrowing, she told her co-workers the money was for her mother's cervical cancer treatment. Known as a smart, hard-working, and friendly colleague, she had built trust at the hospital, so people lent her money at first. She repaid small amounts from her salary, but soon, her colleagues' wallets became revolving doors for her endless debts. By mid-2019, Feng escalated further. She convinced younger co-workers to take out loans in their names, using a special healthcare worker program at the Bank of China that allowed credit up to 300,000 yuan. Older nurses refused her, but a few friends agreed, and Feng slipped even deeper behind her bold personality. However, laid deep despair, she took dozens of online loans with crushing interest rates even when she won hundreds of thousands in a single day. The satisfaction vanished instantly, replaced by emptiness. She lived frugally in a cramped 350 yuan apartment, hesitating even to buy a second-hand refrigerator by October 2019. Her situation had reached breaking point out of desperation. She messaged Dr. Lu Oping, the 51-year-old deputy director of spinal surgery, asking to borrow 200,000 yuan. Lu was wealthy and well-known at the hospital, often seen driving a BMW. To her shock, he agreed, but with a condition. They arranged to meet at an upscale hotel. What happened there, according to Feng, was a day of humiliation that changed her life forever. Luo forced her into a relationship she did not want the next day. He transferred only 50,000 yuan, not the 200,000 she had begged for, and even made her sign an IOU, despite her disgust. Feng continued meeting him between October 2019 and February 2020. The two met 13 times under the same conditions after each encounter. He transferred money. It wasn't until March 2020 that the full 200,000 yuan was finally paid, but by then, Feng's resentment had hardened. Luo had exploited her desperation and repeatedly threatened her, warning that if she resisted, he would ruin her career. I have connections with the police and the prosecutor's office. He told her, if you report me, you'll be the one arrested. Crushed by fear of losing her job, terrified of her family discovering the truth, and drowning in debt, Feng sank into depression. Medical records later revealed she had been prescribed nearly 100 sleeping pills, an ominous sign of just how close she was to giving up everything. Suffering from chronic insomnia, Feng often managed only 3 to 4 hours of sleep each night. In desperation, she attempted suicide several times over a month. She swallowed more than 80 sleeping pills, but each attempt failed as she vomited them back up. Her second attempt involved leaving the gas valve open in a sealed room overnight. Yet that too was unsuccessful. Finally, she injected herself with 800 units of insulin stolen from the hospital, but even then, she survived. By March 2020, with the COVID-19 pandemic surging across China, hotel bookings were restricted. Ling urged Feng to rent another apartment near the hospital. Promising to cover the rent, she agreed and secured a nearby place on the night of March 20th. As usual, Lu Oping arrived at her rental, heavily intoxicated. Without hesitation, he undressed and demanded that Feng serve him, but she was absorbed in a game on her phone and ignored him when he complained he hadn't eaten. She refused again, saying she hadn't showered. Enraged, Lu Oping insulted her, threatened to get her fired, and then passed out snoring on the edge of the bed. Humiliated and seething with anger, Feng picked up her phone and searched online. What to do if you truly hate someone? Among the results, one chilling suggestion caught her eye. Make him disappear forever. That thought consumed her. She began to consider how someone weak could overpower the strong. At around 1 a.m., she grabbed a computer cord, wrapped it around Lu Oping's neck, and pulled with all her strength. He woke up struggling, clawing at the cord as they wrestled on the bed. Minutes later, his body went limp. Whether it was her unusual strength or rage that gave her power, Feng had killed him. Instinct took over. She checked his pulse, and even attempted CPR, but there were no signs of life. Accepting what she had done, she quickly composed herself using his fingerprint. She unlocked Lu Oping's phone and transferred 98,000 yuan to her own account. Yet, almost immediately, the funds were absorbed by an online lending platform, leaving her with barely 900 yuan. Desperate, she tried applying for loans with his bank cards and ID, even taking half-body photos to pass verifications. But the systems required live confirmation, and she failed before dawn. She searched his phone for ways to erase evidence, perfectly destroy evidence, erase card traces, alter health insurance and car registration. Instead of fleeing, she shockingly dressed up and reported for her hospital shift at 8 a.m. Acting as if nothing had happened. Only when she returned home at 6 p.m. did she begin covering her tracks. According to her later confession, she claimed she had to act quickly to prevent bacterial growth for the next 20 hours, from 8 p.m. to 5 p.m. the following day. She dismembered Lu Oping's body into more than 2,000 pieces with her medical training as a nurse. The task wasn't difficult. Larger pieces were boiled before being flushed down the toilet, while bones were packed into 2 large black bags. The scene inside that room was beyond horrifying in the days that followed. She returned to her old rental to collect clothes, discarded her blood-stained shoes, and rummaged through Luoping's car in search of the IOU papers only to realize they had been locked in his office later. Another nurse discovered them in the orthopedic department. To buy herself time, Fanning impersonated Luoping via text, messaging his wife, "I'm out of town for surgery. I can't come home. Last night I was drunk and couldn't answer the phone, but by March 22nd, his wife's suspicions grew when her calls went unanswered. She contacted the hospital, only to be told that Dr. Luoping hadn't performed any surgeries. Recently alarmed, she reported him missing to the police, identifying him as the victim when Fanning was arrested. She showed no denialingly calmness at her first trial. She was sentenced to death for intentional murder and theft. The verdict devastated her father, who fainted in court before filing an appeal. He couldn't understand how his daughter's life had unraveled so completely in just a few years. On December 22, 2020, the Guangxi High People's Court held the second trial. Throughout the proceedings, Fanning described her crimes in an eerily calm tone. Experts suggested this detachment came from her nursing background. Familiarity with illness, blood, and death had desensitized her. Prosecutors argued her relationship with Luoping was an extramarital affair. Fanning, however, claimed she had been coerced, saying, "How could I possibly like him? Just seeing him made me sick. He was a fat man in his 50s. He wasn't even worthy to be my father." But much of the digital evidence between the two had been deleted and was unrecoverable without it. The court could not prove whether she had truly been coerced or if her actions had stemmed from something else entirely, but she had voluntarily accompanied Luoping to hotels several times. Moreover, on the night of the crime, she willingly allowed the victim into the rented house after 10 p.m. This testimony contradicted her claim of being forced into the relationship and appeared unconvincing. The court determined that Liao Ning had quarreled with the victim over financial disputes, which escalated into violence, leading her to kill him. An attempt to dispose of the body. The crime was described as especially cruel in its impact on society, deeply harmful, leaving no room for leniency. On August 20, 2022, the Guangxi High Court publicly upheld the original verdict, rejecting her appeal. This time, her father reluctantly accepted the devastating reality that he was about to lose his daughter forever, for her family and those who cared about her. It was a heartbreaking conclusion. The next case unfolded on a stormy night in Anu Town, City, Hubei Province on the evening of August 23, 2014. Torrential rain flooded the streets and alleys for most residents. It was the perfect night to stay home and sleep peacefully, but for 41-year-old Le Chunning, there was no rest. Her husband, Fan Doan, had not returned, and his phone had been switched off for hours. This had never happened before, intensifying her anxiety at first. La and her family considered going out to search, but the relentless downpour kept them indoors. She sat awake through the night, waiting for dawn the next morning. She called relatives and friends to help find him. They searched tirelessly, but found no trace of Doan. Realizing something was terribly wrong, La finally reported him missing to the Onlu police. News of the investigation spread quickly. Doan, the wealthy owner of a local factory worth tens of millions, had many connections. His disappearance triggered wild speculations. Some believed he was kidnapped for ransom. Others thought he had enemies in business, while some whispered that an affair might have led to his murder. The growing public pressure forced police to act quickly. Their first step was to pinpoint the time and place of his disappearance. Based on Le's account, Doan left home in the family car on the afternoon of August 23 at 11:55 p.m. His daughter spotted his car parked under their building, suggesting he had returned home late that night. Using the car's details, police checked road surveillance footage at 11:35 p.m. A camera captured his vehicle passing through an intersection near his home. From this Investigators determined his disappearance likely occurred between 11:35 and 11:55 p.m. A narrow 20-minute window. Police began retracing his route, hoping to uncover clues, but the heavy rain and late hour meant most shops were closed, and locals had little to report. One lead came from a neighbor, Chen Muku, who ran a repair and car wash shop beneath Doan's building. Chen testified that around midnight, he faintly heard a man's painful cries coming from the hallway nearby. The sound was muffled by the storm, and soon after, the cries ceased. Investigators inspected the hallway entrance and made a chilling discovery. 7 blood stains, 6 small ones scattered across the ground, and 1 large smear on the wall. Several strands of human hair were also found in a corner. DNA testing confirmed all of it belonged to Fan Doan. Missing for more than 36 hours from this, police deduced that the hallway was his last known location. The small, scattered blood patterns suggested he sustained only minor injuries at first. Investigators believed he was subdued and abducted rather than fatally wounded on the spot. Considering Doan was a strong, healthy adult male, police reasoned that the perpetrator must have been either physically powerful, armed, or aided by accomplices. The choice of the crime scene also suggested familiarity with Doan's residence, pointing to someone within his personal or business circle. Finally, the fact that the victim vanished after being attacked at his own doorstep strongly indicated premeditation and planning by the perpetrator. The investigation suggested early on that the kidnappers likely used a vehicle that night. Their movements showed they were familiar with the city's traffic patterns given the seriousness of the case. Inlu City Police quickly assembled a special investigation team, dividing officers into 3 groups. The first group was tasked with monitoring the victim's home, waiting for a ransom call. The second group investigated the business and social connections of the victim Doan and his family. The third scoured the residential building where his family lived, interviewing neighbors and searching for potential witnesses within a 3-mile radius. At first, detectives assumed this was a well-organized kidnapping for financial gain, but something didn't add up. 48 hours passed, and no one had called to demand ransom. Then came a lead that only deepened the mystery. A witness named Liang Jun told police that on the night of August 23rd, around 11:30 p.m., he had taken shelter from the rain in front of a hotel across the street. He noticed 3 people lingering at the entrance of a stairwell. One appeared drunk, lying helplessly on the ground, while 2 women tried to help him stand. The women then led him away quickly. The timing matched the night of Daewon's disappearance. Police suspected the drunk man might not have been intoxicated at all, but rather incapacitated by a sudden attack. When asked if he could recall details of the women, Liang admitted the rain and poor street lighting obscured their features. But one detail stood out. One woman wore a white dress, the other a light gray coat, and she had long hair. This testimony unsettled investigators. Until then, they had never considered the possibility that 2 women were involved in Doan's abduction. Who were they? Why were they at his home so late? And why did Doan seem defenseless in their presence? Detectives began to theorize that the crime was committed by someone close to him, perhaps even aided by his wife, Faz. The investigation dragged on. Police turned their attention to Doan's family. His wife, Lee, insisted her husband had no enemies. For more than 20 years, their business dealings had been smooth, never marred by disputes or debts, yet her behavior raised suspicions from the start. Lee maintained her husband had not been kidnapped but killed. She even told police she had a terrible feeling that his body had been dumped in the nearby Fu River. Acting on this intuition, she asked relatives to search the waters themselves. Police found this statement strange. Was it simply a grieving wife's instinct, or did she know more than she admitted? By August 27th, 4 days after the disappearance, there were still no ransom calls. That morning, at around 9 a.m., a fisherman named Su Shaya was casting his line by the Fu River when he spotted something floating downstream. At first, he assumed it was just a discarded mannequin, but as it drifted closer, his stomach sank. It was a human body. Panicked, Sue called the authorities. When the swollen corpse was pulled ashore, police noted the victim was a middle-aged man wearing a white jinba shirt. His pants had been stripped off and tied tightly around his legs. Heavy weights were fastened to his ankles and wrists with steel wires, clear signs of murder, and a deliberate attempt to sink the body. A soaked and smudged medical report was found in his pocket. Though the water damage made it illegible, DNA analysis later confirmed what everyone feared. The body was Dewante News shatteredly, even though she had predicted her husband's grim fate. The final confirmation was unbearable. Her world collapsed as investigators now shifted their focus from a supposed kidnapping to a cold-blooded murder. News of the crime spread quickly. An affluent local businessman had been kidnapped right outside his own apartment building and then brutally murdered. Such a shocking act ignited fear and outrage across the community. Residents no longer felt safe walking the streets, and the pressure on police mounted rapidly given the victim's status. Investigators developed two possible theories. The first was that the crime was rooted in a personal or romantic conflict. The second suggested a business dispute. Since witnesses reported seeing two suspicious women near the crime scene, police initially leaned toward the first theory, believing the motive to be personal. They questioned Daewon's wife, Lee. Again, she strongly denied the possibility of an affair, explaining that their marriage was stable and their relationship well maintained. Friends also described Daewon as a hardworking and respectable businessman, not someone prone to infidelity. This made the romantic theory unlikely. But what about the two mysterious women? Could they have been hired killers? To explore this possibility, police dug into Daewon's rise to wealth. A trail led back 17 years to 1997 in Chupang Village, Langtown. At 34, Daewon managed road construction projects with diligence, earning valuable experience and connections. By 2003, when villagers began building their own homes, he seized the opportunity with his wife. He launched a cement business that quickly grew into the largest supplier in the city within 5 years. Their fortunes soared into the hundreds of millions of yuan. In 2012, Daewon expanded further, taking over a clay manufacturing plant that supplied local tile companies to avoid cutthroat competition. He and 6 other plant owners agreed to fix clay prices while profitable for them. This angered the city's largest tile manufacturer, Lianqiang. Soon, gangsters linked to Lianqiang began threatening plants that dared buy clay from Daewon Althao. Tensions flared. Local authorities eventually mediated, and the dispute seemed to subside. Still, police questioned employees of Lianqiang. One stood out, 32-year-old He Fei, the personal driver of the company's financial director. He claimed to have been with his boss, Chi Wei, on the night of the murder. When police interviewed Chi, his account matched He Fei's. Furthermore, Lee revealed that He Fei's father and Daewon were cousins, and the two families had long been on good terms. Investigators ruled him out, with most suspects eliminated. The investigation stalled. The only solid clue remained the testimony of a witness named Liang Jun, who reported seeing 2 women abducting Daewon that night, one in a white dress, the other in a gray coat with long flowing hair. If these women were indeed the killers, they would have needed a car to transport the body. Police mapped possible escape routes and scoured surveillance footage. Most streets were empty due to the late hour and heavy rain, yet one vehicle drew attention. A black car circling an intersection near the crime scene around 11:19 p.m. Rain blurred the license plate, but investigators tracked the car through other cameras until, at a toll booth, the plate came into focus. A black Audi, beginning with 2K and ending with 030. The registered owner was Wang Bang, a 46-year-old local man with a long criminal record, a notorious figure in Onlu. Wang Bang had just entered the center of the investigation. Investigators believed they had a crucial lead, but they didn't rush first. They examined the connection between Wang Bagong and the victim, Doyen. Their findings showed that while the 2 men had crossed paths before, there was no evidence of disputes or hostility between them. On September 1, 2014, Police summoned Wang Begang for questioning during the interrogation. He revealed something unexpected. Although the Audi in question was registered under his name, it was often used by his son, Wang Shajiang Wang. Shajiang was then brought in. He claimed that on the night of the crime, he was only driving near that intersection because his girlfriend lived nearby. He admitted that they had an argument that night, which led to him driving slowly as he tried to resolve things with her. His story sounded questionable at first, but when police interviewed his girlfriend, her account matched perfectly to be certain. Investigators thoroughly searched Wang Shizheng's Audi. No suspicious traces were found, forcing them to rule him out. Frustrated, the police returned to the surveillance footage. They reviewed cars passing the scene before and after the crime, narrowing it down to 8 vehicles after careful analysis. None of them matched. How could a vehicle leave the crime scene without leaving a single trace? Believing they might have overlooked something, investigators decided to expand their efforts. More manpower was brought in, and every road camera near the area was reviewed again. This time, they spotted something unusual: a 3-wheeled vehicle, appearing multiple times between the crime scene and the body disposal site. Even more disturbing, the footage showed a person sitting in the back of the vehicle, but the image was too blurry to reveal their face. Determined to trace it, investigators expanded their surveillance review. After hours of non-stop work, they found footage of the same tricycle in an urban district, but now the back compartment of the vehicle was missing. This was a clear attempt to destroy evidence. Eventually, police tracked the discarded compartment to a motorcycle repair shop on the outskirts of town. Forensics examined it and found a faint blood stain. Carefully cleaned but still detectable DNA tests confirmed it belonged to the victim, Doyen. This was the breakthrough they needed. The tricycle was registered to Shengshu, a 28-year-old from Hunan province. Investigators quietly began digging into his life when they questioned Dowen's wife, Li. She insisted her husband had no dealings with Shuo, no conflicts, no personal disputes. So why was Dowen's blood inside Shuo's vehicle? Further investigation revealed that Shuo had only recently moved to Anlu. Even more suspicious, he worked at Lian Kong, the very company that had ongoing disputes with Doyen. The man who got him that job, none other than his longtime friend from martial arts school, who had been dismissed as a suspect earlier due to lack of evidence. But this connection changed everything. Investigators revisited Hu's alibi on the night of the murder. What they found raised even more red flags. On August 23rd, surveillance showed Hu leaving Anlu around 7 p.m. for his hometown in Liang. At 8:30 p.m., he returned. Then, at about 3 a.m., he drove back to Liang. Again, this pattern was completely inconsistent with his normal routine, and it contradicted the statement he gave earlier. Hu had claimed he was with the company's financial director, Qi, all night. Clearly, that was a lie. But why had Qi backed him up? When re-questioned, Qi explained that on August 23rd, he had been drinking with clients in a private room for most of the evening. During that time, late into the night, Huff appeared free to move about as he pleased. It wasn't until after 1 a.m. that he was seen picking up Qi and driving him home. In Kai's memory, Huff had been with him the entire evening. This false testimony made it seem as though Huff had an alibi, but in truth, it revealed he had the opportunity to commit the crime on the very night of Dan's murder. Investigators, however, remained cautious. They suspected Huff wasn't alone, that others, possibly including the 2 women seen by a witness, might also have played a role. To test this theory, police assigned 5 officers to dig deep into the social and financial connections of Huff and his close associate, Su Zhao. Yet, despite their efforts, no suspicious money transfers or evidence of hidden backers emerged with their suspicions. Narrowing, the police moved forward. On September 6, 2014, Huff and Su Zhao were arrested under pressure. Su Zhao confessed, admitting that Huff had been the mastermind during interrogations. The truth about the mysterious woman in white was revealed. What disturbed the officers most was Huff's motive, tracing events back to July 2014. Huff and Dan had repeatedly clashed over business matters involving Clay. One heated argument at Huff's home escalated into a physical confrontation. In anger, Dan lashed out, warning Huff, "If you don't stop interfering, I'll kill you sooner or later." Huff took the threat to heart, obsessing over it until his unease grew unbearable. Eventually, he resolved to strike first. Together with Su Xiao, Huff meticulously planned the murder for more than a month. They purchased disguises, a wig, a long dress, a cloak, steel wire, and heavy weights. Huff surveilled Dan's residence, waiting for the right moment. On August 23, 2014, his chance came after spotting Dan at dinner with friends. Huff predicted he'd return home late that night. Huff put on a wig while Su Xiao donned a white floral dress using Su Xiao's old three-wheeled vehicle. They approached Dan's building around 11:40 p.m. When Dan arrived home and entered the stairwell, Su Xiao ambushed him with a powerful blow. Dan resisted fiercely, but during the struggle, his head struck the wall. He collapsed. Huff and Su Xiao dragged him into the tricycle and drove off. Huff insisted he only helped dispose of the body, but the forensic report proved otherwise. Don had been strangled to death. The steel wire and weights items Huff had prepared were used to sink the body in a river, making it clear the murder was premeditated. When police brought Huff and Su Xiao back to the crime scene for verification, fate delivered a cruel twist. Don's wife, Li Qing, happened to witness it. Overcome with rage and grief, she lunged at Huff, but officers restrained her for her. The betrayal was unthinkable. The son of a family friend, a boy her husband had once supported, had become his killer. On November 25, 2014, the Intermediate People's Court of Hubei Province delivered its verdict. Huff was sentenced to death for premeditated murder, while Su Xiao received life imprisonment. The judgment was welcomed by the public, who saw it as justice served. This tragic case reveals the darker corners of human nature, the dangers of pride, fear, and reckless anger. One impulsive act, one fateful decision, and lives were destroyed. And so, as the rain falls softly outside and night deepens, let this story remind us to remain calm in the face of conflict, to resolve disputes with reason rather than rage. Thank you for joining me tonight on Crime Whisper. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night watch over you.